These are the best rares that are in the new Avatar Magic the Gathering set, and stay to the end because I'm going to talk about the rares that are actually traps that are bad but seem good that you should avoid. And of course, these are my opinions before I actually get to play with the cards in the new set, so if you have played with them already, put down in the comments if you agree with me or what cards I miss. Now, my first one is one of the sagas, The Legend of Kurik, and there are sagas that are back in this set, both at Mythic Rare and Uncommon. And one of my pro tips is to actually try to airbend the saga if you can. That way you get multiple triggers off of it. Now the first one, this one is pretty obvious just because of the raw card advantage that you get. You basically get to scry 4, draw 2 cards, and then on the backside you get a pretty good creature. Next is Wan Shi Tong. This one is really a good static creature because you can flash in, ambush block something, and then get to draw cards off of it, and it scales with the game. Next is Ko, the Face Stealer. This is a 6 mana 6/6, but basically when it ETBs, you get to exile one of your opponent's creatures, which is always good. And then you can also steal the abilities on creatures that your opponent has that died. Next is Phoenix Fleet Airship. Now I know it's a vehicle, which makes you think this is not that good of a card, but it's only crew 1, and it makes copies of itself, including the ability to make more copies, which means once you trigger it the very first time, then you can start using these as chump blockers or just snowball the game out of control. Next is one of the board wipes, the Rise of Sozin. I got the front side and the back side here. There's only 2 real board wipes, both of which are in black, and this is one of them. This one straight up destroys all creatures. Normally not a very good card if you're more of an aggro deck, which red-black is kind of an aggro deck, and so you would typically want to avoid this card, but it's actually really good because if you look at the back side of it here, it gets you a really powerful creature that allows you to put creatures back onto the battlefield from the graveyard. The next busted rare is the Red Saga, The Legend of Roku. I got the front and the back side shown up here. The front side obviously lets you basically draw 3 cards, and you have 2 turns to play the ones you play off the top, and you get an extra mana on your next turn to help you cast those. And the back side is basically a really good card that lets you get Firebending 4, and then use your mana to make 4/4 flying dragons, which is awesome. And those have Firebending 4, which even lets you stack and snowball your triggers and even more. Next is Ran and Shaw. Now this is basically just a 5 mana 4/4 flying with Firebending 2, and if for some reason you get to have additional, or you have lesson cards, which lessons are a sub-theme in green-red and blue-red. So try to focus and put this in either of those 2 color pairs, but even just by itself, at the worst case, it's a 5 mana 4/4 flying with Firebending 2 that also has a way to pump them, so you can basically end the game in a couple of attacks. The next one is an enchantment in green, Avatar Destiny, and you can actually return this one back from your graveyard whenever the creature dies, and then you get to put another creature from the graveyard back in your hand. Now, you do have to worry about decking yourself, so you can probably only use this maybe once or twice, but it's just such good value. It's going to be really annoying for your opponents to deal with, and it also helps you fill the graveyard, which black-green cares about. Next is the Earth King, which this is just huge value. Like, if you look at it, it's a 4 mana 2/2 that also makes a 4/4, and then whenever you attack with a creature power 4 greater, you get to search your library for any basic land, so this allows you to do your fixing as well, ramps you, and helps remove lands, so you can probably draw actual real spells. So this card is just an amazing rated B. You get 6 power worth of stats for only 4 mana. Next is Aang Swift Savior. So now we're getting into the multicolor cards. This one is Flash and Flying. It's only a 2/3 flyer, but it's still pretty decent. You may be able to ambush block a 2/2 or something. And then whenever you want to waterbend for 8, you can transform it onto the backside, which I don't have on here, but it's basically a 5 mana bomb, 5/5 bomb. And then, of course, as a pro tip here, you can either airbend a creature, or you could use it to basically remove a spell from the stack. So it's kind of like a mini counter spell in a way, because then they'll have to recast it later on for 2 mana. Next, let's talk about Aang at the Crossroads. Now, when I first read this card, I didn't think it was going to be very good because I didn't realize you could put the creature directly on the battlefield, the one that you find, and it's mana value 4 or less. So in Limited, you're going to have a lot of creatures mana value 4 or less. So this card is actually a really good 2-for-1 on the front side alone. It is 3 different colors, but as long as you're in green, you're going to have tons of fixing, and this set in general just has a lot of fixing. So I'm not too worried about the casting cost for any of the green tricolored cards. And once a creature leaves, which is not Ang, which is super easy to do because again, you do get to find a creature from your top 5, put it onto the battlefield. Whenever one of them leaves, you flip it onto the backside. I don't have a picture of it, but it's basically a busted 4/4 that gives you earthbending every turn. Next is Boomy Unleashed. It's a 5 mana card that gives you 9/9 worth of stats, which is just amazing. And then whenever this deals combat damage, and by the way, it has trample, and then you get to untap all your lands, and you don't actually have to attack with them. So you could just use your mana later on the following turn for activated abilities, exhausts, or to just cast more spells. Next is Ozai, the Phoenix King, and this one is a little bit hard to cast because it's 6 mana total, 2 blacks, 2 reds, but you get a really good bomb for your payoff. It's a 7 mana trample, haste, firebending 4/4 with trample. And anytime you don't spend your mana from firebending or just in general, you get to keep it as red mana. And keep in mind the triggers on this when it attacks. So firebending is whenever a creature attacks, you get 4 mana. Now you only need 2 more extra in order for it to be indestructible. So basically, if you can attack with it and you have extra mana on it, it'll gain indestructible before your opponent can kill it before damage. So if you are playing against Ozai, you need to kill it before the combat phase. Don't let it attack. Next is Sokka. Now this one I thought was going to be a little bit lower on my list because it doesn't have green as one of its primary colors, and you know, green has all the fixing. But because there's some colorless ways, there's a monolith, there's the dual lands, I don't think 3 colors is going to be too tough, and the payoff you get for all the hoops you have to get through because of the hard casting cost is totally worth it. I mean, Menace and Prowess, and then it gives all of your other allies Menace and Prowess, and then whenever you cast any non-creature spell, which in blue and red you're going to have tons of because that's a sub-theme, is the non-creature spells, you're going to get an extra 1/1 ally token every single time you cast it. It's not limited to once per turn, by the way. You just get it every time, and those will have Menace and Prowess, so it's kind of a snowballing engine here. It's an army in a can. So next I want to talk about the 2 Tophs, both of which I think are really good rares. One of them is Naya, and then the other one is Gruul. So for the Naya one, all of your non-token artifacts are lands, which is kind of whatever, but you do get to make a lot of clue tokens in this set, which are artifacts, and then there's occasional vehicles as well. But the main reason why you want to play this is because at the beginning of your end step, you earthbend 2. So even on your very first turn when you play it, you get some value, and then it just snowballs from there. Because keep in mind, you don't have to target a different land whenever you earthbend. So you can technically earthbend 2 the same card over and over again. So it goes from a 2/2 to a 4/4, 6/6, etc. Next is Toph. This one a little bit easier to cast because it's just Gruul mana. And when it enters, you get to discard a card. Hopefully it's a land, because then you can return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. Most likely going to be a removal spell. So that's kind of a nice 2-for-1. It's a little understated, but look at the second ability. Whenever you cast a spell, now that's any spell, creature spell, non-creature spell, you get to earthbend 1. And then if it's a lesson, you get an additional 1 counter. But basically, anytime you play a spell, you get a 1/1 creature, or you can put a +1/+1 counter on a land, which I think is a really good card to snowball the game. Next is Azula, Cunning Usurper. And this one is pretty cool because it's a 5 mana 4/4, a little understated. You get firebending, even though it's not in red, which is kind of a cool flavor text. But basically, when it enters, your opponent exiles one of their creatures. So right off the bat, you get a 2-for-1. And then they have to give you a non-land card from their graveyard as well. Now, keep in mind, you can only cast these 2 cards as long as you control Azula. So if they kill it, you don't get to cast the cards. But by then, you've already gotten a 2-for-1 because they would have had to kill it, and then they also lost the creature. They do get to choose which creature they lose, but it does specify non-token creatures, so you do get some value from it no matter what. And then next is Beifong's Bounty Hunters. And this one's pretty cool because whenever a non-land creature you have that dies, you get to earthbend X, where it's that creature's power. So basically kind of replaces itself. It's almost as good as drawing a card. So it's not quite as good as the Morbid Opportunist, but it's still pretty good. Next, I want to talk about some tier 2 rares. These are some rares that I think could be good in certain situations depending on how you build your deck around them, and they're not necessarily going to be bombs like the other cards in this set, in this video, but they're still really good, and you should definitely take them or play them if you get them in the pre-release. this week. So the first one is Obsessive Pursuit, which is kind of like the black enchantment that deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card every single turn, but it's not as good because you get a clue token instead, which you have to pay 2 mana. But in this set, you can use the clues for water bending, so that's also pretty nice. And then there's some cards that have payoffs for sacrificing stuff as well, especially in black-white or black-green. So you get payoffs for sacrificing stuff. And unlike that other enchantment, this one actually gives you a way to get lifelink. So if you can sack 3 things in your turn, then you get to put X +1/+1 counters on something, and then you get lifelink on it. And even if you don't trigger the lifelink part, every single turn, if you sack a clue before combat, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on one of your attacking creatures. So I think this is actually a really good card. It's not a good top deck, obviously, but if you get it on early enough and you can conserve your life total appropriately, it's a very good card. Next is Raven Eagle. This is a 3 mana, 2/3 flyer, so a little bit understated, but whenever it attacks, you get to exile a card from any graveyard, and if it's a creature card, which this hates on your opponent's graveyard, you get to draw a card with the clue, which is awesome. Next is Earthbender Ascension. This is one of those landfall trigger payoffs that is really slow to build up, so you kind of need to draw this card early on, but even on its base value, it's not too bad. It's a 3 mana Earthbend 2/2, and it searches your land for a basic, so it replaces itself, and you can do some fixing as well. So it's not the worst card, but it's also not a straight up bomb. So that's why I have it here in my tier 2. And then next is the Green Saga, the Legend of Kyoshi. The top one does require you to actually have a pretty decently good board state, which is why I have it in tier 2, because if you're behind, this card is actually not that good. And then it is kind of nice that you get to draw some cards from it in green, and green usually doesn't have any card draw, which is a good payoff. But Earthbend X also, right, if you don't have a big creature, for the second mode of the saga, if you don't have a big creature, you're not going to draw a lot of cards, and then you're going to Earthbend like 1 or 2, which is also not the best. The backside's not bad. It's just a 5/4 with moderate ability, so that's why I have it in tier 2. Next, let's talk about Avatar Aang. This one is not Ruberg. It's only 4 colors, and luckily green is one of them, and green is obviously going to be good for fixing, but look at the payoff if you can actually do this. So the reason why it's in tier 2 is because of how hard it's going to be to cast consistently on turn 4, but the payoff you get is awesome. It's a 4 mana, 4/4, Firebending 2, and whenever you Waterbend, Earthbend, Firebend, or Airbend, you get to also draw a card. You're never gonna flip this most likely, but if you do, it's cherry on top. The backside's great, but that's why I don't have it shown on here, because you're never gonna get to flip it. And it itself has Firebending, so you're already gonna draw that. And it's not limited to once per turn. Next is Fire Lord Azula. This is tier 2 because you're not gonna actually get to double the spells as often as you think, because it's only when it attacks, and by the way, it's just a 4 mana, 4/4. It doesn't have menace or anything like that, so you can attack one time and then probably kill it and double block or something like that. And then you can double a spell, but it's gonna have to be during your combat phase. So it's only gonna be an instant or like some combat trick or something like that. So it's pretty limited in what it can double. So that's why it's in tier 2. And then next is Katara. Now, normally you would think this is pretty good, but the casting cost is a little tricky. Double blue, 1 white, and it's really slow to get going. The Waterbend X is going to be nice because if you have a wide enough board, you can actually pump everything to maybe be a 5/5 or a 6/6 or something like that, because this itself costs 5, but it is really slow to get going, and it's a 5 mana 3/3. Yes, it makes a 1/1, so you get 4/4 worth of stats for 5 mana, but it's a little bit tricky to cast. Not really a good splash card if you're in any of the other cards to try to get this power in, so that's why I have it in tier 2. Next is Planetarium of Wang Shi Tong. I hope this card is good because I'm a value player and I like it, but it's really slow. So if you can play this on turn 7, that would be ideal, because then you can get the first trigger off of it. But basically, whenever you scry or surveil, and this has a built-in way to scry, you get to cast the top card from the top of your deck for free. So obviously you don't want to put any lands on top because you can't cast those. So when you scry, put the land second and then cast the card off the top. And then there's a cycle of rare lands, and all of them are basically really good if you already know you're in those colors, because it's for free, right? It comes in tapped unless you control a basic, but if you're playing limited, you're always going to have a basic. So there's almost no cost for taking this. And I think the white one is the best because it actually affects the board state in a meaningful way. 4 mana, tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So Tier 2 because you can't take this early because you don't necessarily know if you're in white, and it's not that good because you already need to have a board state. Next, let's talk about some of the rares that I think are traps. So I think you should avoid playing these cards, even though when you first read them, you're probably going to think they're really busted, but I think it's going to hurt your win rate. So the first one is Faded Firepower. This is one of those red enchantments that allows you to increase the damage you would deal to your opponent or any of its permanents. And this one lets you do it in a cool way because you can choose the value for X, but it's triple red, super hard to cast, and also you're basically going to take a whole turn off to not really impact the board, and it's kind of like a win more card in my opinion. Next is Avatar's Wrath. Now this is a situational temporary board wipe in a way. Now, I actually think this is only good in an aggressive deck. This is not going to be good in your controlling decks that have white in them, because you get to keep one of your creatures and then airbend the rest, but your opponent will most likely have ETBs on their creatures, so they're going to get double values. Now, you will also get value on your creatures when you cast them too, but your opponent can't play them for one full turn cycle, so you get to play your creatures first, but they'll have summoning sickness, so you won't even get to take advantage of the fact that your opponent doesn't have a board. So that's why I have it as kind of a trap card here. Be careful. Next is Firelord Zuko. It's really difficult to cast. It doesn't have green, so splashing is going to be pretty difficult. And also, you're not going to be able to airbend that many cards while you have this. So that's why I think it's a bit of a trap. And it's going to have a lot of airbending cards. You're going to probably need about 7 or 8 of the airbending stuff for your own creatures. And then even then, all these things have to line up. You have to have Firelord Zuko. You need to have the 3 appropriate colors for them. Firelord Zuko has to live one full turn cycle, so then you could actually airbend something and then recast the thing that you airbend. So you actually have the extra mana on top of that. There's just too many hoops to jump through. Next is Spirit Water Revival, and this one could be cool if the set is slow enough, but I don't think it will be, because it's going to cost you 9 mana. Yes, you get to waterbend 6 and tap some of your clue tokens or your creatures, so it may not cost a full 9, but it's most likely going to cost maybe 6 or 7, because you can't tap your own creatures on your turn, because it's a sorcery. And if you tap your creatures, you would take away your blockers, which means you're not affecting the board, and then they'll just attack you and you may die. So there's going to be a lot of times where you don't actually get to use this. Now, as a fail case, it's 3 mana, draw 2, which is okay. It's basically just divination, but I don't think it's something you actually need to take too highly, and you should be very cautious about when you actually try to draw the 7, because you'll be putting yourself defenseless. Next is Waterbend Ascension. Now, this enchantment may read like it's pretty good, especially if you get it early on turn 2, right? Because whenever your creature deals combat damage to a player, you get a quest counter on it. Then once you get 4 of those, whenever they deal damage, you get to draw a card. And it has a way to give your creatures unblockable, right? So it kind of synergizes with itself, but it's just way too slow. First of all, your opponents, you have to do damage 4 times with your creatures. So maybe you get some flyers in there. You have to have this card down early enough. Waterbending 4, remember you can tap your own creatures to do it, but then if they're tapped, then they can't attack. And then also, you have to get the 4 counters and then do damage afterwards. So it's a lot of hoops to jump through, and then you don't even get to draw a card until the next turn after you get your 4 quest counters on it. So it's just way too slow, and you're probably gonna die. So I don't think it's worth it. It's gonna hurt your win rate. All right, so those are my picks for all of the best rares in the Avatar set, and some of the trap cards and the tier 2 rares that I think are good, but not something you should pack one, pick one. Put down in the comments though, what do you think I missed, or what do you disagree with? I would love to have a helpful discussion so we can help out the entire community. And if you want to watch the video on all of the things you need to know about the Avatar set before you go and play for your first time, like the brand new mechanics, what are the combat tricks, the board wipes you need to be aware of, the counter spells, you're going to want to watch this video that I got right here.